Some are good, some are bad, but none of them has ever been ugly. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're taking a look back at the history of the Bond girls.
Well, that's quite a nice little nothing you're almost wearing. I approve.
The long-running James Bond franchise is about expensive cars, incredible gadgets, explosive action, and of course, the women. Bond's female distractions have been a staple since the first ever Bond novel, which was 1953's Casino Royale. Interestingly, Bond author Ian Fleming used one of his real-life love interests as the inspiration for these female characters. Muriel Wright was an exceptionally beautiful model and sports enthusiast. She was unique for being tough yet vulnerable and remarkably independent. Unfortunately, she died in an air raid during the Second World War. This tragedy sparked an ongoing theme within the Bond narrative. Many of Bond's women suffered untimely deaths, and this left the protagonist tormented by grief. Aside from their unfortunate ends, Bond girls are also typified by their youth. While Bond was written as a 30-year-old man, most of his ladies were in their early to mid-20s. In the films, older Bond actors widened the gap between 007 and his love interests, sometimes to uncomfortable extremes. The first Bond girl ever written was Vesper Lynd in Casino Royale. However, the first one to appear on the silver screen was the stunning Honey Rider, played by Ursula Andress in 1962's Dr. No. Not all of Bond's female companions became significant characters in the series. While a few faded into the background, others became major players within the story. Some even switched allegiances and turned out to be villains. Through it all, however, Miss Moneypenny remained Bond's most loyal admirer. And while Bond often mixed business and pleasure, his relationship with Miss Moneypenny stayed platonic despite her feelings. Most of Bond's love interests have been limited to one story each. However, there have been a few exceptions. Among these was the character Sylvia Trench. Trench was not an official Bond girl, but she appeared in both Dr. No and From Russia with Love as his recurring girlfriend. This character's most lasting effect on the Bond franchise was to spark 007's famous catchphrase.
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Throughout the series, Bond girls have tended to dress assertively. This consisted of masculine styling that often included wide leather belts, square-toed shoes, and little makeup. Another common attribute of Bond girls was their sexually suggestive names. These ranged from Moonraker's Holly Goodhead to GoldenEye's Xenia Onatopp to Pussy Galore and Octopussy.
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
It is suggested that these double entendres began even with the first Bond girl. Vesper Lynd's moniker was a pun on the name West Berlin. In this instance, it signified her split loyalties as she was written as a Soviet double agent. Most of Bond's women were as sexually charged as their names suggested. However, there was a catch. They usually had torrid histories with men that caused them to withdraw from the hero until he earned their trust and affection. To date, only 2 girls have ever managed to capture 007's heart. These included Tracy DiVincenzo, whom he married, and Vesper Lynd. Sadly, these characters and many more were doomed, while the rest of Bond's girls simply disappeared without explanation. Despite that trend, most actresses who took on the coveted part of Bond girl received major career boosts from the role and became part of cinematic history.
Dink, say goodbye to Felix. Man talk.